Are you one of the 75% of contractors whose financial statements are inaccurate? Find out. Click on the link in the show notes and you'll get a free P&L and balance sheet check.
This is Contractor Sense with Ruth King.
Welcome to Contractor Sense. Here you discover ideas, tactics, news, and information that matters to your contracting business and you. I'm your host, Ruth King. This episode is sponsored by Financially Fit Business. Get the business tool that helps you grow profitably, build wealth, and significantly impact your life and the lives of your employees. Go to www.financiallyfit.business and get started today. Thank you for joining us. Here's how we will help your business and you. It's hot, and whether you are in the HVAC, plumbing, electrical, generator, landscaping, or another contracting trade, you're busy. This podcast and the next podcast are talking about things that we have to do in summer. And today's podcast talks about 5 critical cash flow issues to remember when it gets hot. So here we go. I find that the more cash a company has, the more it has a tendency to become complacent. Summer gets busy and you don't do all the procedures you do when it's slower and keep an eye on cash that you keep an eye on when it's slower. Great cash gives you a false sense of security, and I've seen it for many, many, many years. Contractors have a tendency to relax and pay less attention because they know cash is coming in the door. I see this happen every summer, and I see contractors get bitten every fall when they have to pay the bills and their cash that they accumulated all summer evaporated. So when cash flow is great because everybody's working overtime, then this is the most important time to pay strict attention to cash. So here are 5 things that to pay attention to now that it's hot. Number 1, make sure that the paperwork for all finance jobs gets submitted. I was at a contractor's office, right after the business season, reviewing jobs and just looking at what was on his desk. I mean, things had slowed down a little bit. And I looked at it, and there were some contracts on his desk, and they'd slipped through the cracks. The cash flow was so great that they didn't realize they had missed submitting the financing paperwork. I was at another contractor's office, no joke, after the busy season, and quote unquote, we're too busy to go back and get the financing paperwork signed. Not a joke, not kidding. And you're saying to yourself, that's crazy. Yeah, it is crazy because you did the work. And you know, if you got a bill or I got a bill 60 days after a job was done, I was thinking, you don't need the money. I'll take you 60 days to pay. No, that's not what we should be doing. So make sure that all the paperwork for all the financing that you do, the customer signs off on and it gets submitted so that you do get paid. That's number 1. Number 2 is make sure that you complete your weekly cash flow reports. Now, if you want a copy of the weekly cash flow report, just email me at ruthking@hvacchannel.tv. And your bookkeeper is the one who has to do this. You don't have to do it. But don't let your bookkeeper give you the excuses, I'm just too busy. I mean, I don't have time to do this. You never don't have time to pay attention to cash. Okay. So weekly cash flow reports, you start with a certain amount of money. You add to it by what came in, got collected during the week, not what got sold during the week, but what got collected. And then you know what you wrote checks for, what cash went out for payroll and loan payments and payables and all that sort of fun stuff. It also allows you to plan for the next week's input and outgoes. And it's really, really, really important to do. Now, behind it, when the bookkeeper puts this weekly cash flow report on your desk, she should put a list of aged receivables and aged payables. For those of you who are residential and mainly COD, the aged receivable should be like next to nothing because you get paid as you do the work. This tells you right then and there if things have not been billed. All right. For those of you who are mainly commercial and you do billing, you have to make sure that everything got billed and it's on your receivables. Likewise, on the payables side, you want to make sure that everything got entered so that you know what you're going to be paying over the next 30 days so that you can make sure that the cash is still plentiful to pay all of those bills. And what a lot of my clients do is they look at the accounts receivable aging report and they look at the accounts payable aging report. And on the receivables, they go through it and they circle anything that's over 30 or 60 days, depending upon who the client is, and start the collection process by giving it back to the bookkeeper and say, somebody needs to make a phone call to find out when we're going to get paid, and I want to report back next week. On the payable side, the owners circle whichever payments they want made that week. The bookkeeper prepares the checks and then puts them on your desk, and you can sign those checks. So those are things that go behind your weekly cash flow report, and they're really important because it says, okay, we're up to date on receivables and on billing, and we're up to date on entering all the payables that have come in the door. Every Friday, whether you're busy or you're slow, the bookkeeper should be up to date. Okay. Now, number 3, make sure that the person receiving the checks from your field personnel notes somewhere that he or she received the money. I've seen so many times, especially in the summer when it gets busy, and tech says, I turned in the money, and the dispatcher or the bookkeeper says, well, I never got the money. Well, I turned it in, and then later on you find a check, underneath the seat in the technician's van, which happens more often than you might think. I like those large plastic envelopes that are pink and green and blue and whatever color that you get in the office supply stores or online. And this way, whenever a tech gets a check, it automatically goes into that green thing or that yellow thing or the blue, plastic, and you get 2 of them. So they turn in the one and they get another one. And each tech has a specific color. So you know that all the green ones belong to John and all the blue ones belong to George and all, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. This way they do not get lost. And I promise you, you can't miss that big yellow or that big green envelope in their paperwork. All right. The other thing that you need to remember is that occasionally, it doesn't happen very often anymore, but occasionally some customers are still paying by cash. And you need a policy of some way, shape, or form that says, okay, if a service technician is holding on to $500 in cash or $300 in cash or $1,000 in cash, they have to come back to the shop and turn that money in. If that were me and I was holding $1,000 of the company's money, I would want to come to the shop and turn the money in. I don't like, having that much money on me. It's not a comfortable feeling. But that's me. You have to decide, and your technicians need to know that if it's X number of dollars or more, it has to come to the shop. I have seen salespeople get $9,000, $10,000, or $20,000 even in cash. That immediately comes back to the shop. Generally, those are for replacements or projects or things along those lines, but they actually do get paid in cash. A Chinese owner literally paid a salesperson, I think it was $12,000 in brown paper bags. So you just never know. All right. When we get back from break, I will give you the other 2 that we need to do. Make sure that you're not doing as it is in the summertime. Thanks for listening to Contractor Sense. We'll be right back.
Imagine you had total freedom. You didn't have to worry about money. You didn't have to be a slave to your business. The words, I can't, are eliminated from your vocabulary. What if you could do what you want to do, whenever you want to do it? A financially fit business could give you that freedom. How? By knowing what your financial statements are telling you and taking action based on what they say. You can do this in less than 10 minutes a month at an investment of less than taking your family out to dinner once a month. And if your financial statements are a mess, you can get help. Go to www.financiallyfit.business or click on the QR code below to get started today.
Welcome back. Thanks for listening to Contractor Sense. Before the break, I gave you the first 3 critical cash flow issues to remember when it gets hot. Number 1 was to make sure that all the paperwork for finance job gets submitted and all the billing gets done. Number 2 was to make sure that you complete the weekly cash flow reports. and make sure that all the billing is up to date and all the invoices that you received from vendors is all in the computer on Friday afternoons every week. And you don't have to do this. This is the responsibility of your bookkeeper to put it on your desk. And then make sure that the person receiving checks from your field personnel notes on on somewhere in that pink or green or yellow envelope, and they get put in there. And also make sure that if there's a certain amount of dollars that you want the tech to have at maximum, they all know it. So if they get it paid in cash for $1,000, they need to bring it to the shop. Okay. All right, the last two. Number 4 is to process credit card slips immediately. And you're saying to me, what do you mean? Well, a lot of you can take payments in the field, and you have those little swiper devices. And that poses another issue, is to make sure that if some customer paid by a swipe, that you actually got the payments. We had a situation where a technician got a square in the company's name using their federal ID number, which is on their W-2s, and his bank account number. He went to jail, by the way. And so you just need to make sure that if they are taking payments in the field, you are receiving those payments in the field. There are still some companies who are requiring customers to pay, who pay by credit card, for the technicians to call the office. And those should be processed while the tech is on the phone to make sure that those credit card payments do go through. If you do it and you wait until you get the paperwork in, it might be a day or two later, and their limit on the credit card for the customer might have been exceeded at that point, and your payment gets declined. Not a good idea. You want to make sure that you get paid immediately for the work that you did. So if it needs to be somebody on the phone, if you're using the devices that swipe, make sure that you look at them and your business account is getting the payments for those swiped credit cards. And number 5, now is the time to save, all right? You have cash flow aplenty. You will not miss 1 or 2% of all the cash that comes in the door. You still have 98% to operate on, which should be enough for the summer. This is your rainy day fund. You really won't miss the 1 or 2% now. Every time you make a deposit in your checking account, take a transaction. Usually you can do an automatic transfer to your savings account, which is attached to your operating account. Now, some of the customers and some of my clients prefer to deal with it once a week when you do the weekly cash flow report. That's fine also. It's a lot easier because you know exactly what's come in because it's on your weekly cash flow report. You take 1 or 2% of it and you automatically transfer it into the savings account. Takes you all of 2 minutes to do it. And yes, of course, you can put it on the weekly cash flow report showing that you actually made the transfer, all right? It is just something that if you get in the habit of doing, and in the summertime you can do 2%, in the slower times, you might even only be able to do 0.5%. But if you get into the habit of actually doing this every single week, you're going to find that your savings account gets built up. And there may come a cash flow time where you absolutely need it and you've got it. Hopefully we never have this happen again. But before the PPP loans were approved for COVID, I can't tell you how many of my clients said to me, I'm so glad you made us put money away. I don't have to worry. We have enough to operate on for a really long period of time. That's what this account is for. All right. So here are the 5. Number 1, make sure that all the paperwork for your financing jobs gets submitted and all the billing is done every day. Number 2, make sure that you complete the weekly cash flow reports and have an aged receivables and aged payable report behind it. Again, your bookkeeper does this. You don't have to do it. And number 3, make sure the person receiving the checks from your field personnel gets it in one of those big envelopes, the plastic ones that are really colorful, and each tech should have 2 of the same color. So you know that John has green, George has blue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And if they receive cash on occasion, how much can they have before they have to turn it in? Number 4, process credit card slips immediately. If you take them in the field, the tech should call the office and the credit card should be run right then and there. And number 5, now is the time to save. Save 1% of all cash, maybe 2% of all cash that comes in the door now. It's your rainy day fund, and you can operate on 90% or 98% of the cash that comes in the business, especially when it's busy. Thank you for joining us. Choose one thing that you discovered and implement it in your business. These ideas, tactics, and strategies help you make more money, have more free time, and give back. If you like today's program, spread the word. Please review this podcast on any device you're listening to it on. Help a fellow contractor make more money too. For comments or questions, call me at 770-729-0258 or email ruthking@hvacchannel.tv. Thanks for listening. Have a great and profitable day.